Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to Women Leading the Fight Against Financial Crime. I'm Nicolette Brown, Director of Content at Counsel, and also your moderator today. It's an honor to be here with this powerhouse panel of professionals who not only tackle financial crime, but also reshape what leadership looks like in this space. I'm not going to wait for anyone to carry on sort of registering. I think we're just going to dive straight into the conversation because I have a feeling that the ladies today have a lot to say. So let's make the full use of the hour and just dive straight into it. The goal for today is to create a bold and open conversation around the unique challenges and contributions that women face in the field. We'll touch on leadership, gender dynamics, what crypto looks for us today, mentorship, and what the future in this space holds for us and the next generation. So here's how the session will run. We'll start with short introductions from each of our panelists. Then we'll move into a moderated discussion structured around 5 key themes of careers and leadership, gender challenges, mentorship, innovation and technology, and finally, women and visibility in the space. You'll have a chance to ask questions by submitting to the chat, and we will address these during the Q&A segment. After that, we'll wrap up with closing reflections from each speaker. So just a little note for housekeeping for the audience. Please remember to disable any AI note takers and also turn off both of your cameras and your mic. Okay, let's get started. I've asked each of these wonderful women to share a quick overview of their journey into this work and what drives them today. And I'm going to start with Karyn. Could you tell us a little bit more about your role, your background, and what brought you into this field?
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Washington, D.C. My thanks to Nicolette and the Counsel team for the opportunity to be here today and chat with you all. My journey began a bit of a different road. I was going to be an English professor and wax on about medieval literature. And I had to get a job, which got in the way, and I became a paralegal at the U.S. Attorney's Office, which is our federal prosecution service. And the first time I walked into a courtroom and saw a trial, I said, that's what I want to do. So I began in the Manhattan DA's office in New York City, where people sometimes are not so kind to each other and loved the juries, loved meeting with people and just being involved in everything was happening. And I found that at the beginning of my career, a lot of times the people who were in the financial side, financial fraud, were a lot of men. And I thought, you know what, I want to get in on that. So where do you go in the United States when you want to find financial fraud? We can go anywhere. But one of the hot spots at the time was Las Vegas, Nevada, a little place in the desert where there's lots of money and big rollers. And I started trying and prosecuting cases of financial fraud in Las Vegas, Nevada at the U.S. Attorney's Office there. And that's where I found my niche, and I loved it. And I have been very fortunate in my career with excellent mentors and great careers. And I actually went on from being a federal prosecutor to then teaching and eventually joining the Department of Justice, where I was the legal, I should say, a resident legal advisor for 3 embassies, both in Asia and in Europe, working with judges, prosecutors, police officers, financial authorities, private sectors, all on how do we work together to combat financial crime. And as for those Grateful Dead fans, what a strange trip it's been, but it's been fantastic. So leads me here today. So good morning and thank you again.
Wow, Karyn, I think that's some checkered history you've got there from Las Vegas.
Indeed. Great training ground.
We look forward to hearing more. Jess, tell us about your current role and what you're up to.
So, hi everyone, as the Asia rep. So this is a good evening. It's 7 p.m. in Singapore now. Of course, my CV is not as glamorous as Karyn Kenny.
No.
But I started off as an accountant. So I came a long way like Karyn as well. I was educated in England, and I came back and I joined Big Four. And I started as a tax associate in PwC, and then I joined internal audit for external client. So I found my way to maneuver into the banking scene, and I realized was fraud. And a lot of fraud are internal fraud rather than external fraud then. So I was given the opportunity in the bank to deal with the global standards, and I was put 2 times in front of DOJ to explain the current processes that seems to be global, but Asia is Asia. So the KYC standards and the ops standards are obviously not at par with, say, Brazil and Mexico. And that's where I really got into the international compliance standards, where I think that will be very similar to Oonagh, which she's going to talk later. Then I found my way into fintech and crypto. And because of my small investment in Bitcoin and really changed my life, I didn't make a lot, but I just feel like the concept of decentralized to decentralized was a very fascinating concept that I like to go on. And that brings me here. And much like Karyn, I work with the prosecutor, I work with police, I work with anti-corruption agency because of all the backgrounds and the evidencing that we're able to produce with Crystal. So this is where I am. Thank you so much. I think I'll pass it back to Nick.
Yeah, thanks, Jess. All I would say is don't advertise your investment into Bitcoin because of the spate of sort of horrible news stories we're hearing about. So anyway, but moving on rather swiftly, Bel, please share us your experience.
Yes, so I am Bel. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It is 1 p.m. in Germany at the moment. I have even a more different experience than Jess and Karyn. I was a waitress, and I got an opportunity to work on gambling, and I was doing customer support. And during doing this, I discovered fraud, and it called me. It got me, and I started moving on to it. So I went from looking into poker games and making some people very angry in Vegas, specifically because I was catching stuff that was a bit too big, to start building teams for different casinos. And then I discovered product during this time. I moved to banking at some point in between, and I ended up following my passion and really moving into product. But now, instead of buying the products or using them or training my teams to use them, I prepare and I envision the products that banks, e-commerce platforms, and all companies around the world can use to not only fight fraud, but also combat financial crime. I am really excited to be here today. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Bel. I mean, I just have to make a sort of I think it's a humorous comment that not everything that happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So,
indeed, it also stays in Gibraltar.
Yeah. Thank you, Bel. And finally, Oonagh, let's hear about you.
I was saying saving the best to last, but I'm joking. Honestly, to follow such incredible women is an absolute honor for me. So thank you for having me. My name is Oonagh van den Berg. I've been in the industry now over 20 years. I actually started my career similar to Karyn. Similar to Karyn, I started as a lawyer. Karyn went into legal. I trained as a lawyer at the European Central Bank in Frankfurt. And one of the things I very quickly realized, which has stood me in really good steadfast throughout my career, was when advising on financial regulation, if you don't understand products, you're dead in the water. Our risk comes from our products, our client exposure, our geographical exposure, our industry exposure. So I jumped into learning products. And so throughout my compliance career, I've moved from starting out at JP Morgan in product development, then moving into compliance with, working with the first line advisory on the public and private side. And then I don't know how it managed to happen, ended up in financial crime at one point, 10 years into it. But I wouldn't look back. I've had the privilege of working around the house in all areas of compliance and having pulled up my sleeves and having to build compliance frameworks from the ground up in those areas. And most recently, that's been in the crypto space, but also with fintechs as well. One of the things that I'm really beginning to notice more and more, and we'll talk about today, is the fact that we've stopped thinking about risk because we're too easily benchmarking against regulations. So I'm really excited with this powerhouse of women today that we can kind of jump into talking about these challenges and really supporting the community and what more people can do to learn and understand more about your inherent risks to build stronger risk frameworks.
Wow, thank you very much, Oonagh, and thank you all of you for those really powerful introductions. I think it's very clear that there's a room full of incredible experience that's varied from all over the world and bringing such different dimensions to this conversation that for our audience should be really rich. So let's just carry on and go into the first theme of the day, which is talking about career and leadership journeys. I'm going to start with Jess. You made the leap from compliance, well, in accounting to crypto investigations. You've touched on it a little bit, but what have you learned in the recent years about financial crime in the real world? What is becoming apparent to you?
So where I come from, compliance is actually more like preempting the risk before that happens. That's where I come from, starting from my accounting days. But when I set foot here in the vendor space, and now I'm dealing with real cases, it feels like yesterday there's this event, GCFFC. I think the Rajat Kumar guy, who is an ex-FATF guy, make a very good comment about the Red Queen effect. That means that things are just keep on moving. You're not moving because you're pivoting or diverting. You're really moving just to keep on the same pace, because in the tech world, everything is moving so fast.
Yep.
So fast forward 10 years when I was still in the bank, you don't have the AI fraud problem. KYC is already a problem to standardize among the international global bank. So I think now when we talk about KYC and the data points, I think the data sets that we used before somehow, or rather the one that is recorded in FATF, somehow is also outdated. And actually it's not outdated. It's the definition of what you're going to do and build your policy around that. So now this year in 2025 for APAC, I can say so, is that there's a lot of generative AI enhanced scams that's really happening. And there's a lot of account takeover fraud that actually everyone can be at risk. That links to a very unique scams in APAC. That's the pig butchering scams. You can see that people will have human trafficking elements, gambling, online gambling, money laundering, possibly organ selling at one sort of like it's like an ecosystem. They can do end to end. That's what you can observe in APAC. I'll stop here. Do you have anything to ask me?
Well, I mean, so I would just to summarize it and say what the scale of things has changed. I mean, just in the past few years, hasn't it? It's just around the technology, AI, and the number of transactions. I think, I don't know about you ladies, it's like the overwhelm, I think, of dealing with compliance and AML is just quite sort of, well, it's overwhelming. I'm going to move over to Karyn and see what you have to say, because you've been in this field for a lot, for over 2 decades, and you've seen a lot. So what have you seen that's changed most dramatically in this world, financial crime?
Yeah, and I'm going to echo what Jessica just said, very well informed as always. I will start by saying people cheat, steal, and lie the same all over the world. There's no new way to cheat, steal, and lie. It's just how do they do it? And when I first began my career doing financial crimes, it would be embezzlement, where you had a bookkeeper who had 2 books, who was cooking the books, or check washing, where people would steal checks and then literally wash them and then rewrite the amounts. Sometimes that took skill. A lot of it took skill, and you had to be like kind of taught in the profession how to be that way. What's changed and what I have seen is that honestly, the skill level it takes to defraud, scam, and cheat people has dropped to 0. Now with generative AI, with the LLM, the large language models, you can put up a fake bank page. You can identity. I remember when I was trying to get into clubs in New York City when I was younger, I had to go to a special place and pay a guy a lot of money to get a fake ID that looked good, that would fool the bouncers. Now they can just do it on their computer. So what has changed is that, ironic as it sounds, is that the skill level has gone down. That means more people are in the fraud business and more money. And one of the things I'm seeing too, which I had not seen in the past, and now it's just becoming a tidal wave, is the amount of fraud that's involved with elderly and with romance. And these are people that are particularly vulnerable because they're digital immigrants. They're not digital natives.
Yeah.
And seeing that, and that's heartbreaking as well. And the last thing I've always seen is that, you know, people, when you're a victim of a crime, it's a horrific thing. But you know, if someone like, you know, runs over your dog, God forbid, that's upsetting and it's horrific and should be prosecuted. But when you take money from people, nothing gets them as crazy as that. You put your hand in their pocket, and now it's happening all over the globe, and it's happening to vulnerable victims. And we're just in a tidal wave. And as Jessica said, we're in a whole new, if I may quote an American terminology, it's the Wild West. And statute legislation, we're just trying to keep up all over the world.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem, you're right, that the skill level has gone down. That's just opened the barriers. So now anyone can defraud someone else, and that does appear to be happening. And you're right. So the FBI report most recently suggested that the largest demographic of victims is over 60s, which is very worrying, because that requires education and teaching them how to have recourse.
Yeah, and they have the money. Sorry to interrupt, Nicolette. They have the money. They go after retirees. Yeah, they have the nest eggs. Thank you.
We should get into how people are being able to tackle this, because I was going to be presenting the problems, but we really should cover what the solutions are. But we'll get to that in a moment. Let's first hear from Bel. You've obviously described some of your journey from gambling to banking to product, but how has this shaped your approach to designing anti-fraud tools? Because this is your area right now at Hawk, what you're doing.
Yes, exactly. So I think it has absolutely directed how I conduct my work, and also what I try to envision, because obviously I've done it. I've sat down, I've worked with Excel, I've worked with nothing, I have reviewed KYCs. Funny side note, I even learned to read Cyrillic in the past because I was working with Russian documents, so I had to be able to understand what I was reading. I have reviewed and monitored payments. I have spent countless hours looking at someone's behavior line by line, login by login, game by game, to understand, are they doing fraud? Do they have a problem and we need to do a responsible act here to stop this situation? What am I looking at? So when I was doing all these things, I knew what I was missing. I knew what I didn't have. And this is what I tried to apply to technology, because we have amazing technology that we can use nowadays to detect things. But you also need to think about the people who are going to be working with this technology. How are they going to use it? How can I help them to reduce the cost of having to run the operation, to reduce the time that they are spending looking at something, and to ensure that they are able to actually focus on what is risky. And with the additional challenge, and connecting to what Jessica and Karyn were saying, this changes every day. So today you find a new tooling, a new AI configuration, a new feature that you can use to stop things. Tomorrow you have to think about how it is being counteracted already and what comes next. So it's also a lot of catch up, and also trying to anticipate. So from my experience, I've seen this evolve in this way. Now this is the new regulation. Now this is the new way to stop it. How is it going to be abused next? So it's a bit of panicking about the future, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, it's a game of cat and mouse, because every time you think you've just caught up to the latest methods, something new is devised. And I don't know why it is that the criminals seem to be one step ahead of us all the time, but it seems that is the way. Oonagh, you've worked across traditional finance and emerging fintech, and how have your experiences shaped the way you lead in this space?
It's a big question. It's a really big question. Yeah, I've actually had the luxury, as you said, of working across TradeFi in a number of different capacities, whether it's from wholesale banking, investment banking, through to private banking and retail, and then obviously into the crypto space. One of the things that I really embraced and loved in the crypto space was the holistic kind of teamwork that happens in the crypto space, you know, with the engineers sitting at the table with the risk professionals, with senior leadership, and just talking through the challenges that we're facing. one of the things, and I speak about this quite often, one of the things that frustrates me a lot about TradeFi is that we continue to operate in silos. And this also affects, from a leadership perspective, for me, it also affects people's ability to learn. You know, to really understand how risk exists in an organization, you need to understand all of the pieces of the puzzle. And in that regard, I always think of risk in the middle, and it's like a pizza. And, you know, I like to see people moving through the different departments, the different areas, and getting a real understanding of risk management and how risk is management based on the risks that exist. But unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, we get too led by regulation because we have over-regulated. And I'm a massive believer that we need to go back to simplification there and give people the ability to think again about what their real risks are. From a leadership perspective, that siloing also creates challenges. As I mentioned, in the crypto space, you see a lot of cross-contamination where people are sharing ideas, bouncing off each other. Healthy conflict, which drives innovation. And we really lack that in the TradeFi space because of the way the organizations have naturally evolved over time. So, you know, from a leadership perspective, I, you know, I've really enjoyed more so working in the crypto space, in the fintech space, where I've seen much more, I wouldn't say harmonious working environments, but much more healthy conflict between the various teams that are driving innovation and driving it much more, not even manageable, but realistic risk management that is automated, and that actually puts the risk ownership back onto the right people, as opposed to, you know, compliance owning, in inverted commas, the risk. And then kind of advising people on what they should do. I'm seeing in the crypto space, I'm seeing a lot more empowerment from the business because they understand the risks that the products are exposing us to and bringing that back to the table for discussion. So that's been a big change. Also, I suppose one of the big leadership changes that I've seen over the past number of years, there's been a big drive to increase diversity within TradeFi and more importantly also in the crypto space. It is quite male dominated. I'm not a person that will wave a diversity card for the sake of it. I definitely believe it should be the right person for the right job, whether that person is a man or a woman, or, you know, whatever background, etc. they have. But I don't feel, especially in the crypto space, that we have enough diversification. It is a very male-dominated environment, and there are various people in the industry, such as Amanda Wick, etc. They're doing great work in this space to try and, you know, push that understanding forward. But again, it shouldn't be a person in a job just because of their gender, creed, background, religion, etc. They should be the right person for the right job. But I don't think women are pushing themselves enough in this space. And that comes back to the age-old issue of where if a woman applies for a job, it's because she meets 9 out of 10 criteria. And if a man applies for a job, and I'm sorry to say this, as long as they meet 4 or 5, they know they can learn the rest. So as women, we need to empower ourselves more with understanding that we can grow, and a job should offer us the opportunity to develop and grow. And, you know, what you're bringing to the organization is also what the organization should be bringing to you. So we need to step out of our comfort zone. And so from a leadership perspective, I really want to see more women kind of pushing themselves forward, because we have the knowledge and the skill sets. We're just not as aggressive at times about putting ourselves forward for those roles as we should be.
Yeah, thanks, Oonagh. Before we move on to the next theme, I mean, does anyone else have anything to add to that comment of Oonagh's?
Maybe I want to add something. So I feel like what Oonagh says is now collaborative, and you can see that in Asia, there's a lot of regulators are opening sandbox. They will try out after the feedback, which is great. But the pushing through that part can take a long time, but at least it's more collaborative than just like pushing away to say that, okay, we'll think about it and we'll come up with a set of rules and regulation, and then we will let you open for any application. That's what I observe in Asia. Is a little bit more cooperative now because it's an emerging risk. They maybe have no clue how to start with, and that's where the PPP, which is a very popular public-private partnership, is now on the move. At least that's what I see in APAC. Yeah.
But if I may say, Jessica, I think one of the biggest challenges we've seen here is in the AI space. You know, even from a European perspective, I believe that the introduction of the European AI Act is actually going to be hindering innovation development within the region and pushing developers elsewhere, which will be negative at longer term to Europe, for example. And so exactly to your point, these sandboxes move slowly, but regulation seems to move a little bit quicker, in my opinion, than it should, especially in a field where we know we want to manage the risk. But at the same time, if we do that too early or too prematurely, we're going to end up having unintentional consequences.
Agree on that. Yeah, thank you. Back to you, Nick.
So this last sort of question is we focused on quite a few things there, from leadership, emerging crime themes, risk regulation, all sorts of things. So I just wanted to bring it back to the conversation about leadership and how that is taking shape in different contexts. Each of you are at different sort of stages in your journeys, but of course, none of these journeys happen in a vacuum. And as Oonagh has rightly pointed out, gender dynamics play a huge role in how we survive and thrive in the financial crime space. So I just wanted to talk a little bit more about this area, about the realities of being a woman in fin crime and crypto. And maybe there's some themes that the audience will resonate with or not, or suddenly be educated to. So, Oonagh, this is possibly a tricky subject, but in our prep calls, you shared a deeply personal experience about of discrimination that you experienced. I wonder if you'd be happy to share a little bit more about this, and maybe also tell us, in your view, what organizations can do to better protect women's rights in our space.
Yeah, and I think it's something that's really important to speak to. I have suffered, as a result of pregnancy discrimination in my career, most recently with my third daughter, who's going to be 2 this week. I can't believe she's going to be 2 already. And, let's just be honest, things that women go through, whether it's pregnancy, menopause, etc., is a natural progression of our evolution, of our lives. And in this day and age, discrimination based on age or pregnancy or in any other factor of being a woman shouldn't really come into play. And unfortunately, seeing it even as just 2 years ago myself was a pretty alarming and eye-opening situation where I thought that we as an industry had moved forward from that. And yes, we have a lot more rules and regulations from a legal perspective as protectionism in the industry nowadays. But much more can be done for a woman in the workplace. Putting aside kind of pregnancy discrimination, I also remember with my first child, going back to work and wanting to express, because I was breastfeeding my child, and being told that the only facilities available were the corporate toilets. And you wouldn't go and prepare your own lunch or eat your own lunch in the toilet, but apparently that's perfectly okay to express milk for your child who still hasn't developed immunity. So sexual discrimination does still exist, unfortunately, within our industry, whether we want to talk about it or not, but we need to talk about it. And, it's important for me as well, as somebody that, has a voice in our industry, to talk about the fact that I've faced these challenges. And, we shouldn't take them lying down either. It's important that we, children are the future of our world. Women are going to have children, but it shouldn't impact your career and it shouldn't impact your livelihood, which has a natural impact on the rest of your family as well. So I would like to see a lot more done, especially now in the crypto space, because I'm hearing a lot more stories from the crypto space, not just about sexual discrimination, but also potentially sexual harassment and some other quite inappropriate things coming through. Are we really putting the focus there that we have done previously in TradeFi? I don't think so. And I'd like to see a lot more being done in this space.
Yeah, thanks, Oonagh. My comment there is, we still appear to be suffering the persecution for the function of our genders, and that in all the years that, I've been alive, and stories that we've heard from our parents and their parents, nothing seems to have changed too much, but something must have changed, because here we are, a group of powerful women who are fighting for our space. So it can't all be doom and gloom. Does anyone else have anything to add to what Oonagh has said?
Yes, first of all, I am always delighted to listen to Oonagh and all these ladies, because it's such truth brings out, speak truth to power. So it's wonderful. I think I come from a very kind of again a niche place, but what I had experienced as a trial attorney trying violent crimes, and maybe it's just me, but I had 3 death threats against me from defendants, and my husband has never had a death threat, thank God. And I think sometimes I was coming up against very violent individuals, and they did not like to see a woman in the courtroom kind of listing out all their crimes. And again, it might just be my prosecution style. I'm very persistent, and I feel very strongly that I stand for the victim and for the government and holding people accountable. But that's the one thing I have noticed, at least in my career, was that violence and violent men who are arrested really don't want to see a woman prosecuting them. Whether you remind them of someone or whatever it is that's going on in their psyche that has become perverted, they do not want to see a woman many times. And we face in the courtroom, I think, claims of being too aggressive. You're very aggressive. Well, that's a litigator's job, but I think it's easier coming for a man to be aggressive than when a woman becomes aggressive. So again, it has not hampered me, thankfully, but that, at least from my path that I've taken, that's how I have experienced it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that for each of us in this panel, in this room today, but also for everyone in the industry, that being outspoken or being on a platform does put you at risk in general anyway, because you're fighting, against organized crime. You get some of the most lethal and organized people out there. So I know from our perspective here at Crystal that we're very careful about how we treat our thought leaders and our spokespeople, and in terms of what they say and how we do it so that they're not put at risk. But I mean, obviously it's a different experience from what you're talking about, Karyn. There was one other point that I wanted to make, was that I had spoken to a female law enforcement officer who had trained as a police person in South Africa in the 90s. And she was making the point that as a woman, there were actual legal requirements for her to be in place, to be hired, because you needed a female to be able to attend to female detainees. So there is a role that is, carved and cut out specifically for our gender in certain legal instances as well. Let's move on. And Jessica, can you tell me, what does gender representation look like in crypto and block space for you?
I still think the disparity between the male and female, I would say that is really a male-dominated world. So where I name it the Web 2 versus the Web 3 world, when I came from banking and accounting, professional accounting world, you have the old boys network. And because I did law, I got to know in the internal legal network that I have in Malaysia. It's still pretty much that they will give opportunity to where they hang out, say that who they went boarding school with and who attended their wedding, and things like this. In the crypto scene, pretty much is still I would say less than 25% management is still leave it to female. So for example, myself, I'm in a very customer facing role. So I'm in a frontline role. So when I go into a room that is like police or investigator, and when I start talking, they will actually start asking me about like where I come from. But if I have the same person doing the same thing, those questions is really unnecessary. So I feel like pretty much this is what I have to go through. It's not something that I feel offensive, but it's just that I have to do extra work to really prove my place and my worth. And of course, I have double degree, and people will still question me is that, oh, what makes you bring you here? Things like this that I have to always, instead of just go straight that I'm Jessica and I'm here to be your speaker and your trainer today, I have to go through a lot of questioning. So I feel like this is still pretty much going to happen, and it's not going to stop. And I will stop here first. Do you have any question to ask me?
I don't, but I mean, I think anecdotally we know that the space is dominated not by women, so it does present a challenge because that's, the conversations that you're having and the people that you know and just the general culture that you have to break through is always going to present a challenge.
If I may say to that, Nicolette, and Jessica, I hope I say this in the right way. Jessica is an absolutely stunningly beautiful woman on the inside and outside, and I resonate with exactly what she's saying. The fact that she has to go into somewhere to justify why she's there. She's one of the smartest people I've met, as are other people on this panel as well. Karyn but I don't understand why when people look at a woman and a woman doesn't fit into a stereotypical kind of profile of what you would expect someone to look like, that suddenly they have to explain themselves for why they're there. And I see that with Jessica as well. I've known her for a number of years, and she is absolutely incredible, but she's also incredibly, incredibly super, super smart. And one should not cancel out the other, and unfortunately we still see that in our space. And I actually find it pretty distasteful. Jessica's like, yes, I am. I'm really good looking. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Mic drop.
I have more stats to give. So there's only less than 6% of the job is leave it to top management for ladies. And guess where is so it's about more than 20% of these girls were hired is because of the BD role. And a lot of them will have to go out and start drinking and mingle and be to do that field opening part. I do have a view on that, because while you need a young girl start talking about product, and you feel, and this is really an observation from my part, is that girls can be also hired into some other roles, but not pertaining to just go out and do the first level of BD work. So this is widely observed in APAC, especially those international conferences. This is what I observe. And sometimes this girl, where there are cases, I don't want to mention, last year there's a big case in Hong Kong where these girls are also being taken advantage to, because they were just asking to convert a job from a banking job to fintech or crypto world. So I think for younger girls who are a little bit naive, they might not be so lucky if they were given the opportunity, but they are ultimate motive behind that. And I'll stop here. I do have the case. You can DM me. I can give you the case, but I'm not going to openly say that. Yeah.
And if I may add, I think one of the issues as well is that women need to take care of women.
Yes.
And we have not been as good as mentors. And obviously, yes, there's many facets to this issue, but we have to own our own. And if women are not stepping up to mentor younger women or open opportunities or even do an introductory lunch, this is something that I believe very firmly we need to take ownership of, and we need to move forward on it. And I will just leave it at that, but that is my rallying cry, that, women just need to reach out. And whether it's a young man or a young woman, we still need to do more mentoring. And we talk about the old boys club. Okay, but what about the old women's club?
Absolutely.
Someone needs to join, and we need to get more members. And I'll leave it at that.
Women can be other women's worst enemies at times, unfortunately, in the workplace. As you said, like they're the older women's club, and I've seen it, to Jessica's point, I've also seen it in my career where younger women have been brought in for business development reasons, and there's all of the trappings of the glamorous side of the role, but there also is an expectation of certain other things to occur. And I've actually sat down with a few girls in my time, or a few women in my time, to say to them, this is not okay. And I think they're trapped by the glamorous aspect of it. They're like, well, there seems to be reasons or rationale as to why they're justifying what's happening is okay. But it's abusive. And it's only in years to come they maybe will realize that they've been put into a situation that was abusive. And it's because of power, because, they are younger, they are naive, they maybe didn't realize, they thought that this is what was needed to get their foot up the ladder, further up. And they don't seem to really understand what that can mean longer term. So Karyn, exactly to your point, we need to do more to support women when we see this and speak up and just say, this is not okay. Like it's never okay. But it really, it's something that really rattles my cage. As a mother of 3 girls as well, I would never want this to happen to one of my children. If it had happened, if anybody had even suggested to me to do this, I would have laughed in their face. But I'm lucky that I was raised by a very strong woman. But other girls and other women may not necessarily have that force of nature, so to speak, that others of us have, to say no and to push back. So if anybody's in a situation where they feel that they can't say no, they feel they can't, push back, we're always here. Feel free to reach out to any of us, because that's what we're here for, as a community, to support each other.
Yeah, I'm glad you raised the mentorship, because that is it's something that I wanted you just to unpick a little bit more. Bel, in our conversations before this webinar, you mentioned mentorship as a key success factor, and I think you maybe worked with a mentor yourself. Can you speak to any of that?
Sure. I definitely think none of us would be here if we had not had the luck, coincidence, or the looking for mentors throughout our career to help us get here. And I think it's important also to say that mentorship is not just this thing from the movies where someone is taking you by the hand and gets you all the way here to the end goal. Mentorship happens in many ways, shape, or forms. You can have a mentor who is perhaps your manager or your closest colleague, who will teach you everything, who will show you the ropes and then be by your side when you're going. But a mentor can also be someone who's sick of answering your questions and is teaching you something, or even someone who is acting in a way that you would never want to act in your career, because you also get the perspective of what you don't want in there. So I think mentorship is key, and connecting to what Karyn was just saying. Not only do we need to take all of these opportunities and learn from all the people who surround us, we also need to make ourselves available for others to use us, be it for the questions, be it for showing the ropes, whatever it is. We need to be available and be this next generation of mentors, because the person who learns from us will carry on, and the example we give to those who work closest to us or under us, or even those working above us sometimes. We need to give an example, and this is the only way we can introduce some sort of change, or we can really support others, even if it's sometimes only on the way we were not support when we needed it. So I think mentorship is a key part in everyone's career, and it does not just stick to being a woman, it sticks to everything that we do and everything we talk for.
Yeah, so mentorship is key to thriving, and I think, Oonagh, you said you launched a mentor-mentee program a few years ago. Can you share what worked and what didn't work? And then afterwards, Karyn, I think I would like to talk a little bit more about sort of formal structures that we have in the workplace. So let's just hear from Oonagh first.
Thank you very much, actually, for this opportunity to talk about it. So back in 2020, we launched Raw Compliance initially as a social initiative, and which during COVID, and you were part of it, Nick. I remember, and Karyn as well, and Jessica. We were all there. Sorry, Bel, we'll get you involved now. Now we've met you. And basically what we wanted to do was create a platform that was free for people to come and to create a community within compliance, but also to share knowledge. So we launched I think globally, the first crypto regulatory compliance certification, which the likes of Elliptic and Chain Analysis and Merkle Science and TRM Labs all got involved with, which was wonderful. And so we're really sharing for free to the industry training. But in addition to that, there was basically a request from a number of people saying, like, who do we go to for mentor and menteeship in the industry? And, it's quite interesting. We talk a lot about, people being mentors, but, I still need a mentor. I'm nearly 45, and yet I continuously am looking for ways to improve and develop myself. I'm not perfect. I never will be, but I aspire to be the best version of myself. And I only will achieve that through pulling back kind of the onion layers, so to speak, of me, and just really understanding kind of what works, what doesn't, and trying to change. You can't, well, they say, you know, an old dog can't learn new tricks. Well, this one can. Actually, I could say something else for that, but I won't because it's not passing the watershed. So it's basically about trying to connect people with other people who could support them. And, you know, even as a mentor, I get so much out of having mentees, you know, coming to me. I learn a lot from them about their challenges, and also their development needs and their training needs. And then I can impart some of my knowledge, but then vice versa. I have mentors as well. For example, Dean Curtis, who's been a mentor for me for many years. You know, he's an amazing guy who also is not just a thought leader, but also somebody that works very, very closely on developing. I think he worked with the England rugby team coming up to the last World Cup, basically just on mindset, and thinking about that. So what we really got out of the Mentor Mentee program was connecting people from around the globe who otherwise would never have met, getting them to kind of foster relationships together. And I'm glad to say many of those still continue to this day. But what it also made me realize more and more was, in order for us to do our jobs well in our industry, we need to share knowledge, not just at a local, but at a global level. So being able to connect people and bring it together, and then them within themselves, then creating communities, that's what the beautiful thing was. The challenge is always that mentor and mentee relationships, it's like anything, you need to find the right person that can work with you. And that won't always be the right fit. So it's also then having the knowledge to recognize that early on and politely stepping away from that's absolutely acceptable. So I would say to anybody that's looking for a mentor-mentee partnership, feel free to reach out, but it may not always be right the first time. You may not gel the first time, but you need to find somebody that has skill sets or certain aspects that you want to aspire to, you know, to replicate. But also your mentor-mentee will change through your progression, through your development. You may outgrow a mentor or mentee, etc. So think about that as well. So what is it you need today? What is it you need tomorrow? Think about what you're going to get out of the relationship, what you're going to be able to give back, but also make sure that you do give it potentially a best before or a sell by date, so that you know when you get to that point that, you know, you have got a great relationship, but it may not necessarily be one that needs to continue in a mentor-mentee style.
Thanks, Oonagh. And Karyn, do you have anything to add to that? Maybe more sort of tangible guidance, tips?
I did not turn off my phone. What a faux pas. So I will now turn it off under the table so no one is watching. So yes, I wanted to echo what Oonagh had said. And also what I have found, and I think it comes from my teaching background. So when I was a teacher out in University of Nevada, and then when I was a Fulbright scholar in Eastern Europe, is that a lot of my brightest, smartest kids were quiet. And they would never think to go up to you and ask you anything, and they would never seek you out. And I think that the kind of the more informal mentorships really do favor those who are outgoing and comfortable and will reach out and write to us. But then there's that hidden pocket of really bright people who need mentors but would never think to ask. So one of the things that I was very proud of to be a part of is the Department of Justice actually had a institutional Department of Justice mentorship program, and they instituted it a number of years ago. If you wanted to be a mentor, you had to apply, you had to get your supervisor's permission, you had to be vetted, and then it was kind of like a speed dating for mentorships. And then we had young attorneys throughout the departments, and you would have conversations, and then ultimately you would be matched with someone. And I matched, actually, even though my background is financial crime and litigation, I matched with a young woman who was in FOIA, which is an American Freedom of Information Act section. And she is fabulous. And 2-3 years after the program, we still get together. We still go out to lunch. So I think that the mentorship can be bifurcated from the informal, mentorship where you reach out and you actively seek, and then to have something in the institution, in the framework of the institution, that allows those who are perhaps not as comfortable with it or don't even know to seek it, an avenue to connect with a mentor. Because I would never have met that young woman without being her mentee, a mentor. And I'm delighted to see her progress. And every time I listen to her and hear about what she's doing, I'm just so excited to be a part of it.
That is a great story. Thank you, Karyn. But I mean, it just reinforces, obviously, this requirement upon us, our responsibility actually to both seek mentorship, but also to be the mentee, because this is important in how we shape our next generation, our daughters, as mothers, if we are. So let's not forget about that. We've got 10 minutes left on the clock. And so as I had thought, we have spoken quite a bit already, but I do want to just go back to financial crime and the trends, and just have a little bit more discussion about what we're seeing in that area. So just back to our sort of expertise on financial crime itself. Bel, I have a question here talking about the biggest fraud and compliance blind spot that AI can help us with. What have you identified in your current work where AI can help us close those sort of gaps?
So I would say for fraud and for compliance as well, and anti-money laundering, for me, there's two words. The first and main one is context, and the second is visibility. So up till now, you did not have the context. To get the context, you need a human or a group of humans to do sometimes extremely long investigations, put together the findings, hopefully and ideally realize what they are looking at, and then put everything together. And if you're not lucky and you have to support the MLRO, you have to also write all the content for the SAR and the possible authority escalation as well for them, which can take a long time. AI is able to do this within seconds.
Yeah.
So that context is incredible. And because it's able to do this so quickly, it also means that it can give visibility to the whole picture. So you are no longer looking at a specific end user. You're not looking at a specific end account or an end credit card. You are looking at clusters. You are looking at groups. You suddenly uncover not one guy who's doing something strange. You realize that there's an entire network that is connected together, and you can follow the funds. You can get the context. All of this summarized for you in your face to just review the findings and really pinpoint what you are looking at next to conclude the investigation, because you always need a human at the end of the day to make the final decision and the final assessment. But I think context and visibility would be the main word, as long as, of course, the AI is audited and governed properly, which is like another entire topic that we don't have time for today, as obviously you need to eliminate the biases. But I would say those are the main points for me.
Yeah, you 100%. We don't have time for that enormous topic. As you were speaking, I was thinking, oh, I have opened a can of worms. This was a separate webinar. So what have I done here? But I want to ask Jessica about the crypto fraud trends that you're seeing, and what should we be prepared for? And presumably this AI will be able to help out here.
So back to this kind of crypto fraud, crypto trend that you're talking about, is pretty much social engineering that people widely observe. I mean, at least I can say for APAC, because the foundation of many fraud are actually the fraud schemes. They actually are exploiting into cultural trust and also the language diversity. And also they are manipulating individuals into handling their own credentials, their assets, and the access. So I think that we might be all have fulfilled the cybersecurity training that you think. But let me tell you, me as a compliance person for some time, last year, my birthday, I almost got tricked because they told me that I have unused point from this telco company that I need to claim before when for my birthday for my iPhone 16. I almost got tricked into that because it looks so real. And let's talk about like the grandmas or the people who is not so vigilant about that, because this can be really real because you don't know. So I feel like this is social engineering that is really they're using that to attack people, not just crypto, but the financial, the TradFi as well. So the phishing, the pig butchering, the deepfake scams, and all these are human layers is where the breaches begin, because they thought it was somebody they trusted because it looked so real. So what we're seeing here is the multilingual phishing campaigns. If they fail to do that, they will try another language or another way. In Asia, most people speak 1 or 2 languages, and they hope that you will fall for their tricks. Social media impersonation, that is a widely used thing. In APAC, at least there's a lot of like regulators, police, they will be disguised as income tax, police, to say that you now have fine and we need you to give some sort of things. That is really common here. I'm not sure about US and Europe, but pretty much it's still social engineering. Mixed romance scam, investment hybrids, that is a mixed emotional manipulation with crypto fraud. That one is cruel because they really profile the lady who is in need, or lady or man who is in need of emotional support or emotional needs. And they know the victim might not know they're talking to 15 scammers with the same profile, but this is really the problem we're facing here in at least for APAC.
I want to ask Oonagh about the tech response to this, because to me it seems like it's a little bit of a human versus a machine problem, because the machine can do so much, like go through reams and reams of data and is faster and quicker at analyzing, but we still have the human element of fallibility and falling in love, essentially. How do we counter this with technology?
I think what's very important there as well is data. And I think you hit the nail on the head. These systems can go through, especially AI tools, can go through a lot of data when the data is actually, there's one source of the truth and there's actually good, solid data. Unfortunately, what we're seeing a lot of instances at the moment and let's just put it down to kind of identifying the payments within organizations, the traditional transaction monitoring systems that are rules and scenario based, they can't pick up these typology changes, especially with low risk accounts where people have, and these will not be big volumes at times, especially money mule accounts and pig butchering. It will start off quite small. So we need to really understand the behaviors of our clients and their expected typologies on their accounts, which, as I mentioned, traditional systems don't do. So, AI, it's not going to be a magic bullet that will resolve everything. But once we do have better data, a good example somebody was talking about recently was when we onboard customers, we have 1,200 pieces of data on each of our customers, roughly, approximately. But what do we take away to use at a first point in call? Around 120. So we've gone from 12,000 data points, 1,200 data points to 120 data points. We leave so much on the shelf that will tell us so much about our customers and our clients and what we'd expect them to do. And I always say this, for me, KYC is meaningless. I'm going to tell you who you want me to think you are, or I'm going to tell you who I want you to think I am to get a low enough risking on my account. But it's only through my account usage that you will find out who I am. So, the fraudsters are easily being able to open accounts, but in today's age, they're doing it more simply. They're using money mules. They're, using people who are from low income backgrounds who, it's like, hey, I'm going to give you €5, 10 euros, 15 euros. That soon mounts up. They're like, this is great. And what they inadvertently do is give them access to their bank account to move payments. So we've got a real pandemic on our hands in this regard, because detection is so hard because of the volumes involved. They're very low. And identifying changes in third parties is not something that rules and scenario-based systems will do. AI systems will have that use case, but we're far from that capability at the moment. So unfortunately, as the sophistication and simplification of money laundering is developing, our tools are just being shown for what they are, in that they just don't have the capabilities that they need. And AI is the solution, but it is not the ultimate solution, because you still need people behind it for the explainability, and also SMEs to look at what's come out of the system and try and make sense of it. So we've got a very exciting future in our hands in terms of tech development, in terms of data analytics, moving away from KYC to transaction monitoring in the financial crime space. But there's a lot of work to be done, and technology, unfortunately, the illicit actors will always be 2 steps ahead.
I try to squeeze in a whole lot more in 30 seconds, but what I want to do is just ask Karyn one last question, and that is, if AI is not the silver bullet, and we do have this huge problem on our hand, does the answer lie in something that Crystal is a little bit focused on right now, and that is educating the consumer? So I wondered if you can tell me from your experience, what place that has. What is the work that still needs to be done there? Sorry, it's a bit of just throwing that question at you without even.
No, that's fine. I'm used to it. That's what we do in the courtroom. No one tells us what's coming, losing from a witness testifying. You are absolutely right. So you had said earlier, why are the criminals always one step ahead? Because you and I, we get up and we think about our children and our job when we go to work. They get up and they think, okay, how can I get as much money today from that victim? And they are zeroed in and focused on it. And the one thing I always say constantly is educate yourself. There is so much information out there, but what it takes is time and to search for it and look at all different venues so you get a very diversified viewpoints, but educate yourself. And then also cybersecurity, we call cyber hygiene as well. Like the law firm I'm with now, DeMarco Law out of Manhattan, one of the specializations that we have is cyber, hygiene, security. How do you educate yourself? We work with clients to set up that framework. And the last, although it's a little bit different, we're talking about education, but this is more of like a public service announcement, if I may. As a prosecutor, I don't want to see victims. So those who are listening today, please talk with your parents, talk with your grandparents. Who are they chatting with? We're very super focused on children, as we should be, and what's going on. But I cannot tell you how many bank tellers tell me, how many bank managers have told me, yeah, she came in today and she was, withdrawing $5,000 because her boyfriend, who works on an oil rig out in, somewhere, who's very handsome, needs the money to fix a part. And, we kind of look at that and we say, oh, how would you fall for that? It's very easy, as Jessica said, when you're lonely. But education is key. So that's why I'm very thankful to you, Nicolette, to the Crystal team, and to my colleagues here today for the opportunity to explore that, because let's talk about it. Let's learn. The bad guys know what we're up to. We need to know what they're up to.
You couldn't have said a truer word there. So I am. We've 2 minutes over. Shall we try and do a quick fire round with final reflections from each of you and see if we can cover that in the next 1 to 2 minutes? But it would be really nice just to have your final thoughts that our audience can take away with them. Jessica.
Okay, don't be complacent, because everything is fast moving, and growth comes from asking questions and leaning to uncertainty. It's driving to everyone's topic today. Whatever Bel, Karyn, Oonagh was talking about mentorship, it's all about growth. You need to be intact with what is really happening. That's where you can be building your own defenses. That's it.
Thanks, Jess. Bel, what do you have to say?
So I'm going to follow a bit Jessica's line. I think you need to question everything and question everyone, regardless of how much they know, regardless of their position. And you need to ask all of the questions. Don't take anything for granted, and build your own critical thinking, because that's what is really going to drive you forward and eventually make you stand up.
Fantastic. Oonagh.
For me, it's always education, 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 exactly as what's been said here. I'm a massive believer about continuous development, constantly looking for ways to further your understanding, your development, and your growth. There are a lot of free resources out there in the industry as well, so leverage from them. And to Karyn's point earlier, we are a tribe. From a woman's perspective, we're there to support one another. So if there's anything any of us can do to support any of you in any capacity, feel free to reach out to any of us directly or through Crystal Intelligence, and we'll be more than happy to help.
Thank you, Oonagh. And last word for Karyn.
I'll do closing arguments, echoing everything that my colleague said, but also this is maybe more of an overarching. Believe in yourself, because when you go out into the business world, there's other people who want to put you in a box and they want to define you. You are the narrative of your own story. So for young women and also young men, have confidence, And if you fail, there have been times where I've been smacked up against the wall and I fell down and I got up and like, you know what? I learned something. Number two, I'm going to keep going. And that is something that builds, people call it resilience, but I think it's just good old fashioned, you get up and go. Failure is not the end and the opportunities are there. And just like a slogan, I don't know what you have in your countries, but we have Lotto, and there's a great slogan for advertisers. You got to be in it to win it. So step up, take a seat at the table. And thank you.
Thank you, Karyn, and thank you, Oonagh, Bel, and Jessica. This has been a wonderful conversation today. Thank you for your honesty, for your thoughts about leadership, and your true commitment to fighting financial crime. So again, I'd like to just wrap up and say it's been a wonderful session, and I hope that the audience enjoyed all the views that were expressed today. If anyone does want to get hold of us, you can get hold of us at Crystal Intelligence, and we'll happily pass on questions to the rest of the panel. So I'll draw this wonderful session to a close now. Thank you so much, everyone.